learning session. This is going to be your final session for your unit on separating materials. What our challenge is today is we are going to separate a lot of different materials using everything that we've learned over the last few weeks. So we are going to look at the difference between sieving and filtration. We're going to look at how we separate salt from water by condensing and evaporation. And we are going to put all of those techniques together to be able to separate back out the materials that I am going to mix. Now your challenge today is to be able to tell me how you would do that. How you do it is up to you. The techniques that you use are up to you. Try and pull on everything that we've learned over the last few weeks to be able to do this. What I would like you to do is create maybe a video, maybe it's a cartoon, maybe it's a podcast, maybe it's a GIF, maybe it's a keynote or a PowerPoint, or maybe it's just text, maybe it's a written text. How you tell me what you're going to do is completely up to you. But what I would like from you is to tell me how you are going to get all of the different materials back out of the water. These are all reversible changes. So they're just physical changes. There is no irreversible change. Now remember, an irreversible change is something that I cannot get back out. I cannot uncook an egg, but I can get salt out of the water, which we learned a few weeks ago. So these are all reversible changes, things that I can put back to the way they were. Now the ingredients that we're going to use today is rice, some little pasta, some salt, some sand, and I have found some little iron filings. So these are tiny little bits of metal. Let me show you. So what I mean is I have found little tiny pieces of iron filings. The reason I know they're iron filings is because they are magnetic. If I move the magnet around, then I'm moving these little iron filings. These are going to go into my mix as well. So think about the technique that we use to be able to separate this material as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to add all of these ingredients into this water. So I'm going to add a little bit of rice. I've added the rice, and now I'm going to add some of this pasta. Now, what I'd like you to think about is, look at the size of this piece of pasta compared to this tiny grain of rice. Okay? Think about, they're two solids, they don't dissolve, but how would I separate those two? Need to break the pasta up. And now I'm just going to add a few bits of pasta and think. What I want from the end of this session is for you to be able to separate all of these materials back out. I want the rice in a pile. I'd like the pasta in a pile. I would like the salt in a small pile. And I would like the sand to be in a small pile. You need to be able to separate out these materials and give them back to me individually. Next is to add the sand. And if we remember from the session with the natural water filters, I talked about how small the sand was and how small a grain of sand actually is. So compared to the rice, the grain of sand is actually smaller than the grain of rice. So think about that when you're thinking about your separating techniques. So just a little bit of sand into there. And remember, the sand doesn't dissolve. It just sits on the bottom. And finally, we're going to put some salt. And the salt does dissolve. It'll mix with the water. So I need you, finally, to be able to, let's think about this. What are we going to get out? We are going to get out the big piece of pasta, the grain of rice, the sand, and the salt, and my little iron filings. I'm need to get out the little iron filings. Inside there we have pasta, grain of rice, sand, salt, and iron filings. And we need to be able to separate these all out. Think about which you would separate first and why, how you would separate it. What would happen if I tried to separate it using this technique? What would happen to the other ingredients that were in there? If I used evaporation first, what would happen to the other ingredients? So I need a step-by-step, what technique you will use to separate the materials and how that will separate out the pasta. What technique will you use to be able to separate for the rice? What technique will you be able to use to separate for the sand? What technique would you use to separate the iron filings? And what technique would you use to separate the salt? Finally then, what I will have is an overview of how you would use different techniques to be able to separate an entire mix that we have. As we can see here, we've got a big mix of lots of different things. I do love a horn. So please, publish your results onto your Seesaw page. Now don't forget, like I said, you can do this as a video, like I'm speaking to you. You can do it as a GIF, as a drawing, as text, as a voice note, however you want to be able to explain to me what you would do. But please make sure that you explain the whole process. Personally, I think I would do drawings and a little bit of text either side, and then I would talk about that on a video. That would be my choice, but your choice is up to you. Okay, really look forward to seeing your answers, and let's get separating.